The morning sun spilled across the rugged expanse of Dawson Ranch, highlighting the sprawling fields and the sturdy, weathered farmhouse that had stood for generations. Cole Dawson, a man of imposing height and broad shoulders, moved through his property with the precision of someone who had long mastered solitude. The ranch had been his sanctuary for years, a place where the rhythm of work and the silence of the open land had filled the void left by loss. Yet the quiet he cherished so deeply was about to be broken. Lila Harper appeared at the edge of the driveway, her modest wagon creaking under the weight of her belongings. Her face was pale from grief, and her eyes carried the lingering sorrow of a woman who had lost her husband unexpectedly. Despite the heaviness in her heart, there was a determination in her steps that drew attention even from a distance. She had traveled far to reach Dawson Ranch, seeking work, shelter, and perhaps, unknowingly, a second chance at life. Cole first noticed her from the porch of the farmhouse, his dark eyes narrowing as he assessed the figure approaching. It was rare for anyone to wander onto his property unannounced, and rarer still for a woman to arrive alone. His instinct was caution. Over the years he had built walls around himself, not just against the hardships of the ranch, but against the unpredictable tides of human emotion. Love, loss, and disappointment had taught him the cost of vulnerability. And yet, there was something in the way Lila carried herself, her quiet resilience, the subtle grace in her movements that stirred a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. When Lila reached the porch, she stepped down from her wagon with the tentative dignity of someone aware of her precarious position in life. She set her small trunk on the wooden planks and took a deep breath, her hands brushing against the worn leather strap. The air between them was charged, a mix of caution and unspoken expectation. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft but clear, carrying just enough confidence to counteract the tremor of nerves she felt. Cole nodded in acknowledgment, his expression guarded. "Morning," he replied. His voice was steady, measured, a subtle test of her resolve. He didn't offer a welcoming smile or an invitation to enter, because that was not his way. In his world, trust had to be earned, and caution was survival. Their first interaction was formal, polite, and layered with tension. Lila explained her purpose-seeking work and shelter, offering her skills in exchange for food, a place to stay, and safety. Cole listened, his eyes taking in every detail. The wear in her boots, the way she held herself with both vulnerability and pride, and the faint trace of tears in her eyes, carefully restrained. He was impressed, though he would never admit it aloud, by her courage and determination. Mrs. Dawson, the housekeeper, arrived soon after, her sharp eyes quickly assessing the newcomer. She guided Lila through the basic routines of the ranch house, showing her the rooms, the kitchen, and the necessary household chores. Lila followed diligently, absorbing instructions, her movements graceful even in the midst of uncertainty. Though their words were few, a silent understanding began to form. Cole observed her closely, noting her willingness to work hard, her thoughtful attentiveness, and the quiet confidence that suggested she would not be easily intimidated. Lila, in turn, studied him, noticing the tension in his shoulders, the guarded nature of his eyes, and the commanding presence that betrayed years of solitary strength. Both were evaluating, cautious yet intrigued, aware that this meeting could mark the beginning of something significant. By evening, Lila had completed her first set of chores, her body tired but her spirit resolute. She had survived the initial encounter with Cole, navigated the unfamiliar surroundings, and made a subtle impression on the man who had built walls around himself decades ago. Cole, watching her retreat to her modest room, felt an unfamiliar stir in his chest, a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and a faint, uneasy anticipation. The first day on Dawson Ranch ended quietly, with both individuals aware that their encounter was more than a simple arrangement of work and shelter. Though neither spoke of it, a spark had been ignited, a tentative connection that would slowly grow in the days to come. The widow's arrival marked the beginning of a journey that would test boundaries, awaken hearts, and change a cowboy's life forever. The morning after Lila Harper's arrival, Dawson Ranch seemed simultaneously unchanged and utterly transformed. The fields stretched in golden sunlight, the horses grazed as they always had, and the wind rustled the tall grass across the rolling hills. Yet within the walls of the farmhouse and under the watchful gaze of Cole Dawson, something new had begun. The presence of a woman who would stir more than dust in the ranch's quiet spaces. Lila awoke early, the sun barely cresting the horizon, and set about her chores. She moved through the kitchen methodically, preparing breakfast for Cole and the ranch hands, her hands deft and precise despite her inexperience with the ranch itself. The clatter of pots and pans echoed softly, a rhythmic accompaniment to her thoughts. She reminded herself constantly of why she had come here, to find safety, to find purpose, and perhaps to carve a new life from the remnants of her grief. Cole observed her from the doorway. Leaning against the frame with arms crossed, his expression carefully unreadable. He was a man who measured people quickly, assessing skill, patience, and strength of character in mere moments. Layla's movements reflected none of the hesitancy he had expected from a widow new to the ranch life. Instead, there was an instinctive grace, a quiet confidence, and a keen attentiveness that immediately captured his attention. Their interactions throughout the day were polite, functional, and yet charged with subtle tension. Lila learned quickly. She fed the animals with care, swept the barn, prepared meals, and tidied the living quarters. But she did so with her own rhythm, occasionally pausing to adjust a misaligned saddle or offer a suggestion about the layout of supplies. Each time she acted independently, Cole's initial wariness softened slightly, though his stoic expression never fully revealed the admiration he felt. Clashes were inevitable. Cole was a man of routines, every task planned, every motion accounted for. Lila, while diligent, approached the ranch with fresh eyes and occasionally questioned his methods. "You don't need to oil the fence posts every day," she remarked one afternoon, brushing her hands on her apron after examining the wood. "It's thorough, yes, but it's also unnecessary." Cole raised a brow, measuring her audacity. "Efficiency and upkeep prevent disaster." "It's better to be meticulous than negligent," he replied, tone firm but not unkind. "I understand that," she said, meeting his gaze with gentle resolve. "But sometimes practical adjustments save more time and energy." Their conversation could have sparked tension. Yet instead, a subtle spark ignited, a recognition of each other's intelligence and strength of character. Lila realized that Cole was not inflexible. He simply valued control and predictability. Cole, meanwhile, found himself intrigued by her calm confidence, her willingness to question without confrontation, and the quiet wisdom behind her observations. As days turned into a week, the rhythm of life on the ranch began to weave them together in small, unspoken ways. Cole noticed the way she smiled at the ranch hands, earning their respect with patience and kindness rather than authority. He saw her determination when she learned to saddle horses, the careful way she moved through the stables, and the thoughtfulness with which she approached every task. These were not mere chores, they were opportunities for her to prove herself, not to him, but to the world and herself. Lila, for her part, began noticing the depth behind Cole's stoicism. Beneath the rugged exterior, there was patience, a protective instinct, and a quiet attentiveness that suggested he had once cared deeply and still cared in ways he would not admit aloud. She sensed the loneliness that lingered beneath his controlled demeanor, and the occasional softness in his expression when he thought. She wasn't watching stirred something unfamiliar in her own heart. Evenings brought a different kind of closeness. While working late or sharing small tasks, there was a subtle tension in the air, unspoken glances, the near brush of hands, and the warmth of mutual understanding. Neither dared speak directly about the feelings budding between them, but both were aware that their connection was evolving from polite acquaintance to something far more intricate: admiration, curiosity, and a quiet, unacknowledged attraction. By the end of the first week, both Lila and Cole understood that Dawson Ranch was no longer just a place of work or refuge. It had become a space where their personalities, strengths, and vulnerabilities could meet. Though the walls around Cole's heart remained, they were beginning to show cracks, and Lila's presence had ignited a subtle, undeniable spark that neither of them could ignore. The day closed quietly, the sunset casting a warm, golden glow across the farmhouse and fields. Lila paused at the edge of the porch, breathing in the cool evening air, aware that the man inside, the guarded, lonely cowboy, was no longer simply her employer. He had become something more, something fragile yet compelling, a man whose life, perhaps, she could change forever. The Caldwell Ranch had never felt more isolated than it did that evening. A sudden, fierce storm had rolled across the plains, dark clouds blotting out the stars and heavy rain hammering against the wooden beams of the farmhouse. The wind howled through the gaps in the walls, rattling shutters and sending a chill through every room. Inside, the air was heavy with candlelight and the scent of wet wood, and both Cole Dawson and Lila Harper felt the storm in a way that went beyond weather. Earlier that day, Lila had been assigned to help in the barn, feeding the horses and checking fences despite the gathering clouds. Cole had wanted to do it alone, but she insisted, her quiet determination overcoming his habitual need for control. As the rain began, they hurried back to the house together, soaked to the skin, clothes clinging, hair plastered to their faces. The farmhouse, usually a haven of routine, now felt intimate, the small space amplifying the closeness between them. After drying off as best they could, Lila retreated to the kitchen to prepare a warm drink, shivering despite the fire in the hearth. Cole followed at a distance, his own coat dripping onto the wooden floor, boots leaving dark traces. He leaned against the counter, silent, watching her. For weeks he had observed her diligence, her courage, and the subtle grace in every motion, but now, something in the storm, in her vulnerability, made him notice her in a different way. She was no longer just a helper, no longer a woman he needed to tolerate. She was someone alive in a way that stirred long-suppressed emotions in him. Lila poured the tea and set a mug in front of him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the unspoken weight between them grew almost unbearable. She noticed the guarded intensity in his gaze, the tension in his broad shoulders, and the flicker of emotion that betrayed more than his stoic demeanor would allow. She felt her own heart quicken, realizing that she too was standing on the precipice of feeling something dangerous, something that went beyond gratitude or familiarity. "You've been distant," she said softly, almost hesitating. Her voice carried more than observation. It carried concern, curiosity, and something tender. Cole's jaw tightened. "I've been cautious," he admitted. "I've seen too many people come and go, promising things they couldn't keep." She nodded, understanding not just his words but the pain behind them. "I know what it's like to lose someone," she said quietly, "and to fear the emptiness that follows." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The fire crackled, the rain battered the windows, and the world outside seemed distant and unreal. And then Lila, emboldened by the storm and the closeness of the man she had come to trust, whispered words that would change the course of their relationship. "If I undress, will you stay?" Her tone was low, almost shy, yet there was a daring vulnerability in it. Cole's breath caught. The question was startling, direct, and intimate, yet it was not a mere provocation, it was a plea. She was offering herself not recklessly, but with a fragile courage, testing the waters of trust and desire. In that moment, Cole saw not just her body, but her heart, laid bare in the simplest yet most profound way. He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her, careful to honor the fragility of her vulnerability. I won't go anywhere," he said quietly. His voice carried reassurance, protectiveness, and an awakening desire he could no longer ignore. It was a promise not of lust, but of presence, care, and respect, the first step toward intimacy that neither had fully acknowledged until now. The storm outside mirrored the storm within them, wild yet cleansing. Their eyes held each other's, conveying what words could not fully capture: the acknowledgement of need, the tentative spark of trust, and the beginning of emotional awakening. That night they did not rush. They did not force what was fragile and precious. Instead, they stood together in quiet understanding, hearts beating in sync with the fire and the rain, each aware that something had shifted irreversibly between them. By the time the storm passed and silence returned to the ranch, both Cole and Lila were changed. The night had revealed a truth neither could ignore. Their connection was no longer professional or transactional, it was personal, intimate, and full of the promise of love. The whisper that had startled and mesmerized them was the first tangible step in a journey that would awaken desires, hearts, and lives forever. The days following the storm were quieter, but Dawson Ranch was far from peaceful. Life on a remote ranch always carried its challenges: unpredictable weather, stubborn livestock, and the constant threat of theft or misfortune. Yet now, amidst these practical challenges, Cole Dawson and Lila Harper faced a more complex struggle: the unspoken, burgeoning emotions between them. Their connection, once carefully veiled by professionalism and routine, was beginning to surface, complicated by both inner fears and external pressures. Cole felt the pull of conflicting emotions like never before. He was a man used to control, accustomed to relying solely on himself. Vulnerability had been a luxury he could not afford, not after the losses he had endured. Yet Lila's presence had begun to erode the walls he had built around his heart. Her quiet courage, her compassion toward the animals, and the way she moved through the daily routines with strength and grace made him aware of feelings he could neither name nor dismiss. He found himself lingering in the kitchen just a little longer to watch her, or pausing by the barn to catch her smile as she guided the horses, heart unexpectedly stirred. Lila, too, wrestled with her emotions. She had arrived at Dawson Ranch seeking security and a fresh start, but she had not anticipated the depth of attraction and emotional resonance she felt toward Cole. His protective instincts, combined with his steadfast reliability, drew her in, igniting a sense of safety intertwined with desire. Yet she feared rejection, misreading his guarded demeanor as disinterest or restraint. Every glance, every gesture, every subtle touch became a question in her mind. Did he feel the same? Could she risk opening her heart again? External pressures added another layer of tension. A neighboring ranch reported missing livestock, prompting Cole to increase security along the property's perimeters. The men on the ranch worked long hours, repairing fences, reinforcing gates, and tending to the animals with urgency. A sudden sickness among the cattle required both Cole and Lila to work late into the night, ensuring the herd remained healthy. These shared challenges forced them to cooperate closely, relying on each other's judgment and skills in ways that demanded trust. Each successful solution, each moment of shared responsibility deepened their connection, even as neither fully admitted it aloud. A particularly tense evening arrived when a distant noise near the northern fence startled both of them. Cole instinctively reached for his rifle, his body tense, while Lila's hand instinctively hovered near his arm, seeking. Reassurance, though no intruders appeared, the incident revealed the depth of their reliance on one another. Cole saw her courage firsthand. She did not panic. She did not retreat. She assessed and acted calmly, reflecting a strength that matched his own, and Lila, in turn, observed Cole's vigilance and his unwavering care, recognizing that his protective instincts extended beyond duty. They were personal, directed toward her. These external challenges mirrored their internal conflicts. Both were forced to confront fears they had carefully kept hidden. Cole's pride and fear of emotional vulnerability clashed with the deepening desire he felt for Lila, making him cautious, hesitant, and at times irritable. Lila's fear of rejection and uncertainty about her place in his life created moments of tension, though they were often brief and quickly smoothed over by necessity or circumstance. Yet, through these trials, a new understanding emerged. Moments of shared labor, quiet observation, and unspoken care created a foundation of trust. Cole began to see that vulnerability did not weaken him. It allowed him to connect with another human being in a meaningful, transformative way. Lila realized that opening her heart did not guarantee pain, but offered the possibility of partnership, protection, and love. By the end of the week, both Cole and Lila recognized that their relationship was evolving. The storm had passed, but it had left a lasting impression, both literally in the battered fields and figuratively in their hearts. The challenges they faced together had revealed their strengths, their courage, and their capacity for empathy. Though neither spoke directly of it, a quiet mutual understanding settled between them. The walls around Cole's heart were no longer impenetrable, and Lila's cautious heart was ready to explore the possibility of something more. The ranch itself, resilient and enduring, seemed to reflect their transformation. Just as fences had been repaired and fences had been reinforced, their emotional boundaries were being rebuilt not as barriers, but as structures of trust, respect, and emerging intimacy. They stood side by side, sharing the labor and the burdens of the day, aware that something profound was blossoming between them, a bond that was equal parts necessity and choice, duty and desire, caution and hope. By nightfall, as the golden sun dipped behind the distant hills, Cole and Lila stood quietly on the porch, watching the cattle settle into the pastures. Neither spoke, but their proximity and the subtle brush of hands as they leaned on the railing spoke volumes. The challenges of the day and of the week had solidified a connection deeper than attraction. It was the beginning of a love forget throughout adversity, shared vulnerability, and the courage to face the unknown together. The evening air on Dawson Ranch was calm, a stark contrast to the storm that had passed days earlier. The sky glowed with the soft amber and pink hues of sunset, painting the fields in golden light. Inside the farmhouse, the warmth of the hearth filled the rooms with a gentle glow, casting dancing shadows across the walls. It was a rare moment of quiet on the ranch, a pause in the endless rhythm of chores and responsibilities. And in this stillness, Cole Dawson and Lila Harper found themselves alone together, the perfect setting for the emotional reckoning that had been building between them. Cole leaned against the counter in the kitchen, arms crossed, watching Lila move about with quiet purpose. She was kneading dough, the flour dusting her hands and apron like a delicate snowfall. Her hair, slightly tousled from the day's work, framed her face in soft waves, and her eyes, usually so focused on the tasks at hand, occasionally flicked toward him. Cole had spent the past weeks observing her, noting her strength, her patience, and the subtle grace in every movement. And now, with the fading light illuminating her in a warm glow, he felt emotion stirring in his chest he could no longer ignore. For Lila, the kitchen had become a space of both comfort and reflection. She had grown accustomed to the rhythm of ranch life, but her mind frequently wandered to Cole, the guarded, stoic man whose presence had gradually become a source of fascination and longing. She had witnessed his courage during the storm, admired his care for the animals, and glimpsed a tenderness that rarely revealed itself to anyone. Despite her own fears and the lingering shadows of grief, she found herself yearning for something more, a connection that transcended routine and necessity. Finally, Cole broke the silence. "Lila." His voice was low, hesitant, betraying the internal struggle he had fought for weeks. "I need to tell you something." She paused, flour-covered hands resting on the counter, heart beating faster. "What is it?" she asked softly. He took a slow step closer, careful not to crowd her, his eyes meeting hers with intensity and vulnerability. I care about you," he confessed, the words heavy with honesty. "Not because I'm supposed to, not because of any obligation, but because I see you, truly see you. And it's more than I expected, more than I can control." Lila's breath caught. She had sensed the pull between them, the subtle tension and unspoken admiration, but hearing it spoken aloud made her chest tighten with both relief and anticipation. "Cole, I feel the same," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly, but with unwavering sincerity. "I've tried to deny it, tried to stay focused on work and survival, but I can't. I want this, I want you." The words hung in the air, delicate and powerful. For the first time, the barriers that had defined their relationship, professional distance, fear, and pride, fell away. Their eyes locked, speaking a language words could not capture: desire, respect, trust, and the awakening of love that neither had anticipated. Cole stepped closer still, until the space between them was charged with tension and longing. He did not rush, did not force the moment. Instead, he extended his hand gently, brushing a loose strand of hair from Lila's face, his thumb lingering against her cheek. She leaned into the touch, a silent invitation, acknowledging the trust and vulnerability that bound them. "I've never felt anything like this," he murmured, voice low and intimate. "And I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose you." "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered, her hand finding his, fingers entwining naturally. "I want to be with you truly, fully, no conditions." In that quiet kitchen, amidst the soft glow of lanterns and the fading warmth of the hearth, they shared their first real moment of connection. It was not rushed or purely physical. It was emotional, intimate, and transformative. They had both faced fear, loss, and vulnerability, and now, in their mutual acknowledgement, something profound had awakened: love. The rest of the evening passed in gentle conversation, small touches, and lingering glances. Neither needed to speak of the future yet. The present, the shared understanding, and the emotional intimacy were enough. For the first time, they felt fully seen and fully accepted. The whisper, the storm, and the weeks of shared labor had culminated in a moment that would forever change their hearts. By the time the ranch settled into the quiet of night, Cole and Lila stood side by side, hands entwined, hearts aligned. Their bond had evolved beyond attraction or curiosity. It was now rooted in trust, admiration, and the profound realization that love could indeed emerge even in the most unlikely of places. The Dawson Ranch had never felt more alive than it did that morning. Golden sunlight spilled across the fields, glinting off the dew-soaked grass and highlighting the expanse of the property that had been Cole Dawson's solitary domain for so long. Yet the quiet that had once defined the ranch had transformed. Where there had been silence and routine, there was now warmth, laughter, and the subtle hum of shared companionship. Cole and Lila's lives, once separate and cautious, had intertwined in ways neither could have anticipated, shaping a new rhythm built on trust, respect, and love. Cole rose before dawn, a habit formed over decades, but this morning he felt a different anticipation in the pit of his stomach. There was work to be done, chores that demanded attention, but he was eager for Layla's presence. She had been awake before him, tending the horses with a quiet efficiency that was now familiar, almost comforting. The sight of her moving through the barn, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, radiated a sense of purpose that stirred something deep within him, both admiration and desire. Lila noticed him standing at the doorway, silhouetted against the soft morning light. Their eyes met, and without a word, a small smile passed between them. It was a smile that carried months of unspoken understanding, the acknowledgement of shared vulnerability, and the promise of what lay ahead. Cole stepped into the barn, careful not to startle the horses, and offered a quiet greeting. Lila returned it. Warmth in her eyes and hands still dusted with hay. Life on the ranch had not become easier. Livestock required attention. Fences needed repair, and unpredictable weather demanded constant vigilance, but the difference now was profound. They faced these challenges together. Where once Cole had relied solely on himself, he now found reassurance and strength in Lila's competence, courage, and unwavering presence. She was no longer merely a helper or a companion of circumstance. She was a partner, equal in skill and resolve, capable of sharing the burdens of both work and heart. Their days flowed with a harmony that had once seemed impossible. Mornings were for chores and tending the fields. Afternoons for mending fences, inspecting cattle, and repairing equipment. Evenings for shared meals and quiet conversation. Yet amid this routine, there were moments of tenderness and intimacy that spoke louder than words. A brush of hands while reaching for the same tool, a lingering glance across the kitchen, laughter shared over minor mishaps. These small moments became the threads weaving their hearts together. Cole's transformation was subtle but undeniable. Where once he had been guarded, hesitant to express vulnerability, he now allowed himself to show care, affection, and appreciation openly. He learned to notice Lila's moods, to anticipate her needs, and to offer support without expectation. Likewise, Layla's heart, once shadowed by grief and caution, had opened fully to the possibility of love. She felt safe, respected, and valued, not just for her skills or resilience, but for the entirety of who she was. Their emotional intimacy deepened alongside a growing physical closeness. Cole would occasionally brush a strand of hair from her face or clasp her hand in a quiet moment, and Lila would respond with a soft smile or a gentle squeeze. The physicality was never rushed or demanding. It was a natural expression of trust and mutual desire, a reflection of hearts fully awake and willing to embrace love. Every touch, every shared glance, reinforced the bond that had grown steadily through trials. Shared labor and quiet confessions. By mid-afternoon, they often found themselves on the porch, watching the cattle graze, sharing stories, or simply enjoying the tranquility of the land. These moments were sacred, times when the outside world fell away and only the two of them existed. Here, they spoke of hopes, dreams, and the future, weaving plans together with laughter, care, and deep understanding. The culmination of their journey was not marked by grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but by the quiet certainty that they had chosen each other freely and completely. Love, they realized, was not an obligation, nor a fleeting passion. It was a deliberate choice, nurtured through patience, vulnerability, and courage. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting warm amber and rose light across the fields, Cole and Lila stood side by side on the porch, hands intertwined. The ranch, their shared home, stretched out before them, a testament to hard work, resilience, and the new life they had built together. Cole's eyes softened as he looked at Lila, and she returned his gaze, her heart full of gratitude, love, and hope. In that moment, everything was clear. The trials they had faced, the fears they had conquered, and the vulnerabilities they had shared had transformed not only their relationship, but their very lives. The marriage that had begun in circumstance had blossomed into a partnership of choice and love. The ranch, once a place of solitude, was now a sanctuary of joy, companionship, and enduring devotion. Cole and Lila embraced, the warmth of their bodies mirroring the depth of their connection, and together they faced the twilight of the day and the promise of a lifetime to come, knowing that love had not only awakened their hearts, but had forever changed the course of their lives.